So if that's all we're putting together, that's very basic information, then yes, I believe that would work.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so I want to know more too, but the opportunity to do something that's, you know, a little bit here and a little bit there, I'm just open to it.
Truthfully, if it did get rolled out, and it was working and everything's great, if, you know, 80–90% of our calls are BLS, we don't need that complex handoff report. We're gonna get to the emergency department and everything's great. The few times you call on the phone, then that might be looked at as more serious. You might get a better response. Instead of the nursing staff, that's an emergency department that's on their phone calls from EMS, and all of them have been BLS patients, and you're trying to get across that this one might not be.
Well, the good news is, John, we're not one of the cutting edge companies. Our size is such that, you know, we're not gonna get in on the ground level. It's gonna be vetted by many other places before we get it. So we're gonna get version 3, 4, 5, whatever. You know, that's just the way we are. We're not a company that come in, get at the ground level and have something fail. We're a company that needs to see that it's working reasonably well, done in many other places. The CERT trial, the reason we got in on that at the ground level, because it didn't cost anything. You know, we were able to be part of the research, and they were able to donate the equipment, and we didn't have a preconceived determination that the auto pulse was or was not going to be good or effective. You know, so a Pulsera is going to be just a little bit different. You're going to have to prove to us that it is definitely worth our time and our money, and you guys will get a chance to see it. But with everything else, first there will always be some quirks. Anytime there's software, there's quirks. You know, look at your is it road safety that's in the trucks now? Well, I know. I mean, but it's this version. We've had another product, and all that sort of stuff. What other things have we, you know, seen and gone through? Very good concepts, state-of-the-art concepts. You know, I mean, do you know they're talking about putting road safety in every train across the U.S.?
They need it.
Right, obviously they do. But I mean, you know, part of what we're going to talk about is quality today, and you know, the keynote speaker was Story Musgrave, who is an astronaut. You know, and it's always interesting when you see a big conference like this, and this had to be 700–800 people, and they brought in a guy that's not a physician, and well, he actually is a physician. Sorry about that. He actually, that's part of why they selected him. He's not an EMS doctor, you know, had not worked in EMS, but actually he trained as a surgeon because they actually trained him to do appendectomy on the space shuttle. You know, like what happens if there is some sort of catastrophic something up in space. So that's part of why he was actually selected and where he went for quite a bit of his training. Nonetheless, you know, so he's talking to EMS docs about quality from a space shuttle, you know, and NASA perspective, and they didn't have the greatest track record, right? You know. Now I'll tell you one thing. I wish I had the picture of the gantry the morning of the launch of Challenger. There was ice everywhere. Yeah, yeah. The one that was, you know, launched when it was too cold. And the interesting thing is, they hadn't done any tests on it at that temperature. You know, so one of the things we're going to show us, I have a slide later on, it talks about norms, you know, being within standards and norms. And it fell outside that, and he didn't have an explanation. Couldn't explain why it was outside the norms, and everybody else still said go. You know, and now, you know, we saw how many lives that it did cost. But it was a very eerie picture to see the gantry that the shuttle's right up against, and there's icicles everywhere. You know, because there's a lot of moisture coming off of the rockets, and it hang and it freeze. And it's very eerie to see that. It's like, I just thought it was cold, and you know, the O-rings shrunk in the cold, but then, no, there was ice everywhere. It was beyond that. So very, very different thing when we talk about quality. All right, so we talked a little bit about trauma, the Pulsera, STEMI, stroke, any other issues that you guys have? Nothing. Not a single question. Yeah,
I was gonna say, still referring to strokes, say your ETA to the hospital is very short.
Uh-huh.
And I know in our protocol, we should be doing a 12 lead before we get the scan done. Is that something that we want to do, that even if it delays transport and everything?
well, so it delays transport. Let's look at it as patient care. And later on, we're gonna talk about what was referred in the conference and we call the package. How well are we packaging the patient? And I don't wanna steal the thunder, but one of the stats we're gonna come up with, let me have you guys, because I want your input on this. So from the time that the patient actually comes through the door at the emergency department, you can pick any emergency department, I'm not trying to pick on one or the other. It always seems like I do, just because I know my home place better. You know, I don't spend my life at St. Elizabeth's, okay? So I don't know how things are. So you always know your own home's dirty laundry the best. But pick any ED, from the time you come across that threshold of the door to the time that they can actually do some sort of intervention or treatment. And when I talk about this, yesterday, they were talking about like, what do you mean, Doc? Like doing an EKG or like doing a point of care blood sugar? No, I'm talking about when they can actually say, Zip comes through the door and says, hey, guess what? The patient's blood pressure is 60. Something that you're not gonna do, something they're gonna have to do. You know, so let's say you come through the door and you were taking another blood sugar and you tell them the blood sugar is 50. How fast can that emergency department actually get an amp of D50 if you don't have your own? Now I know most of them have things like anaphylactic kits, so they don't have to pull that out of the Pyxis, so an amp-epi for anaphylaxis is quicker. However, let's say they needed to give 4 milligrams of morphine or 50 mics of fentanyl. How fast could that be done? So what do you think? How fast can that be done?
30 minutes.
6 to
probably
10
at
minutes?
least.
What's that?
30 minutes probably at least.
Well, no, thankfully we're quicker than 30. 15. Okay, so yesterday we came up with, I think they came up with 12, but, so research is done. The great thing about this conference, there's a lot of innovative research that shows a variety of different things, and they looked at that. It was 14 minutes on average. Now, there's a huge span, and there's a whole different, there's big urban EDs, and there's little small ones. Sometimes the little small ones like New London, they're not any faster, you know. And a lot of it has to do with, well, is there a patient in the computer? And then I'll pick on you. I was like, what happens if I put in my med order before the patient's in the room? Okay, well, no, you can't see it. So in the computer system, if the patient is not in the actual physical room in the computer system, and I put in a medication order, it doesn't cross over to Pyxis. Okay? So you want to irritate the staff, put in the med order before they're actually in the room. Like if they're in the waiting room, you put in the med order. It won't carry over to Pyxis. They can't find it. They have to search it. Steve pulls all his hair out. I do
That's why I had to
it.
leave the ED, I had no more hair left.
I intentionally do it for Craig, because I like to watch him just
He
spin.
just hits ED patient for everybody anyway.
Oh, does he? Okay, nuts! I didn't know this about him. All right, but see, that's the whole point. So we're gonna get back to that. We're gonna talk more about packaging the patient, and so what I would tell you is, yes, get the EKG done. All right, particularly since it's a true decision-making, you know. But I would tell you to get the EKG done, because have you ever seen them do it in the ED? Yeah, so they have to have their face sheet, and have to put it. Huh?
Even if we have the EKG we've just done, they're doing the EKG.
Oh, they're gonna do one anyway. Well, and here's the reason why. So, can anybody outside of the emergency department see your EKG?
No.
Technically, no.
No, technically, realistically, everything, no. I mean, the cardiologist can't see it, neurology can't see it, nobody in the whole wide world can see it. I mean, your transmitted EKG doesn't even get into the record for who knows when.
Well, I'm talking about like at patient handoff.
Yeah, no, I know, they still do it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm different, but I like to look at your EKG. I'll look at your EKG and then I'll look at the other one later unless yeah, that's all I really need.
Right, I just meant for his particular example, it doesn't necessarily seem that him doing an EKG speeds up whatever definitive care might take place.
I'm not saying it speeds it up, it will help determine. It helps you determine, it helps me determine, it helps a lot of things. We'll still act on that if it's abnormal. Now, the other thing is, we already talked about that bundle. Hey, Mark. All right, sorry, I didn't really see you in the back. So we already talked about how's the ED get paid? What? Hey, have they gotten that EKG in 5 minutes? So you're going back like, why are they repeating that EKG right away?
Okay.
They've got to get it done within 5 minutes. And it's actually reported to CMS and it goes on a website. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it seems completely counterintuitive to you and me. And it is. It absolutely is. However, it's a hoop, jump through it, you know. Yeah. You've just done it, they're gonna repeat it.
Okay.
You know what? Dilly dilly.
So still with that same question, when our goal for code strokes are scene times 15 minutes,
Uh-huh.
we want to make sure we get the 12 lead and do everything else, even if it's taking us 20, 25 minutes, because say the patient's stuck in the back room under a table or something, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, of course
But
they are.
still make sure we're getting all that done, even if our proximity to the hospital's around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I would
Even
do
if
it-
increases the time.
Well, again, you know, let's be focused on those things that are quality. Communicate to your emergency department where you're at and your stuff. I mean, the good news is, you know, that's, your 15-minute scene time is gonna be more effective, even if it's 25, because you have a shorter transport time.
Mhm.
You
Sure.
know, you've got
Makes sense.
same people that are still 15 minutes out, and they still got all those same issues. You know, and believe me, what is it about strokes and people with UTIs that cause them to get weak and go to bed and get wedged between the wall and the bed? I don't know. I mean, that's just where they're at all the time. It's really amazing. Yeah, I would follow your stuff, and it was highlighted in this meeting. The interventions are not gonna come for an average of 15 minutes. They can have, there was a range, and large EDs, 30 minutes. I mean, because large EDs, just because you walk through the threshold, they sometimes will wait. This I didn't bring up yesterday, it's really beyond what we're talking about. One innovative fellow in EMS, he actually put GPS on ambulance cots, and he watched where they went within the emergency department, and sometimes would wait 30 minutes before they even got to a bed. 30 minutes.
Road safety on a cop.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you can laugh at it, but who's driven down 94 on the way to Chicago? Yeah, what's over on the east side of that highway, just about Kenosha? Big old Amazon. Big old Amazon plant?
Oh, yeah.
All right, do you think human beings are picking up packages and moving them? Right.
That's probably not supposed
Yeah, I bet you it's really, there's a ton of people doing things, but a lot of that stuff is being done by computers and robots. Yeah, but, all right, guys. So anything else? This is great stuff. This is what I wanted to interact. I've got to get your feedback, get your interaction. Also tell you what the crews were thinking about yesterday. We're going to talk more tonight, and they'll get your feedback and input. Mark, anything you want to say?
Yeah, can I take a few minutes or no? You guys almost done, or?
Well, we're going to get ready for a break.